What's up, y'all? Y'all are listening to Living Corporate's flagship podcast. If you didn't know, Living Corporate helps organizations build employee engagement and market trust through data analytics and data transformation, our e-learning platform, and brand marketing storytelling. We're so excited for you to be here today. The conversation you're about to hear is going to connect the dots between employee experience and go-to-market effectiveness. If you're not ready, get ready. Here we go. Charlene Corely. How you doing?
I'm hanging in, taking it, as my mama would say, 1 hour at a time.
1 hour at a time. Listen, I've been appreciative of Nielsen now for a while. For those who maybe don't know, Nielsen was an early pilot partner for our e-learning program. And we've also had Sandra, who is the chief, she is the head,
our fearless leader
in charge, fearless leader at Nielsen, and appreciate her voice and her candor when we had her as a guest. Now it feels like yesterday was actually a couple of years ago now.
Oh my gosh.
But I know like time is flying on. Look, there's so many things I want to talk to you about, and we're going to try to take our time, at the same time respect your time. So I think first things first is, I asked you how you were doing. You said you're hanging in there, taking an hour at a time. Mm-hmm. Talk to me about, like, from your perspective, the state of not just DEI, right, but like employee experience at large. Like, I'd love to hear from where you sit in terms of external brand and communication and engagement. What are you seeing? What are you experiencing? What are you noticing?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think it's a time of challenge. And especially as, Nielsen today sits squarely in serving the media industry, and our clients have been going through a ton of transformation for several years, which means we have been going through a ton of transformation for several years, trying to find our footing again. And so I think from a macro point of view, and especially as a Capricorn creature of habit myself, going back to something familiar is also a communication of safety. Oh, we know this works. And I think we are very much in a time where, things that we've tried before aren't always working. And so we're having to really innovate deeply, rethink deeply, and just continue to find ways to find the right path forward. And so change is really hard. Change is really hard with a ton of stakeholders involved. And I think people feel that, it's very easy to talk about, a corporation strategy and plan and whatever that is. But at the end of the day, we are very much humans with real lives and real financial obligations and real challenges emotionally and all of those things. And so I think when the familiar just starts to get disrupted, mentally, that's really heavy to carry. And people have been carrying a lot for a long time. And so the best we can do is, try to be cognizant of all of that, and trying to give the grace that I hope that I receive is sort of my approach to it all. But yeah, it is definitely challenging to figure out, what the next era looks like, and how to best continue to serve our clients and stakeholders. That's internal and external. So it's a lot of juggling.
I would imagine so. And to your point about like the familiar, because and retreating to the familiar, in the spirit of fear or just uncertainty. And I think I'll say too is that sometimes, like, we kind of speak in these binaries, like fear itself is not necessarily bad. Like, fear is a healthy human emotion.
Fear keeps you alive in many cases.
Fear keeps you alive, right?
I just had this conversation with my 7-year-old. Absolutely.
Yeah. Fear is normal and good, right? I think it's power. I think even when you talk about the idea of courage is, it's not that the courage is not absence of fear. Courage is holding and
I got to
honoring your
stand up
fear
to
while
it.
then doing moving forward anyway, right? And so
Absolutely.
when you think about like corporations in this moment, so often, so many of them are seeking to return to core. Like they'll frame it that we're returning to core, we're returning to what's worked, so we're returning to blah blah blah, without necessarily appreciating that business doesn't work that way. Like you have to innovate to continue forward. It's the degree of your innovation that determines how far you're going to go forward. But trying to do the same things over and over and over and over and over is a great recipe to get left behind.
Yeah, we have been going through this as an organization with the evolution of our methodologies. Nielsen's been around as a brand for 100 years. And the mediums that we measure have, in some cases, been around just as long. And so human behavior has shifted. And so for us to continue to keep pace with that, our methodologies, are and have continued to evolve as well. And it's such an interesting balance because you still have to respect and honor bringing folks along, right? And the work that's been done. But you also have to find those ways to continue to, like you said, press on and say, this is the piece that's missing and we're going to fill that gap and here's how. And so that's a lot of the work that's been going on internally. And just kudos to the army of folks on that side of the house that keep the lights on, and figuring out the ways to like literally measure human behavior. That's what at the core, Nielsen audience measurement is trying to do, but it's a challenge. It is really challenging to meet the needs in such a dynamic day and age.
Yeah.
The other side of that, oh, go ahead.
No, I'll cut you off. You go.
Oh, sorry. And then the other side of that is like, the things that you can't plan for. You can have the perfect plan about how to innovate. And then, people's values are all of a sudden different. What we thought we had our culture in a really good place is all of a sudden different. Macro political policy environment is different. And so how are we going to continue to navigate, what we created this plan in a vacuum. Now we got all these rocky waters. So now what does the chart to our destination look like? And I think that is also part of like the mental toll right now is just, you just don't know what that next thing is to come in and disrupt your waters. And how are you going to continue to press forward regardless?
When I think about audience measurement and engagement, and you talk about the fact that Nielsen's been around for over a century, I think about how much goes into audience behavior, right? So to your point, right, let's say like in the early or the mid 20s or early 30s of the 1930s, like consumer behavior was so different, right? And then and I would think like with every permutation, like, as our society becomes increasingly late stage capitalist, like people use their time differently. Like there's like the pressures as to what they even consume changes. And then, if you compound that with, to your point, like different like political actions and pressures, like that's going to change. But I just think about like, even like the past like 10 years, right? I think about like how streaming has continued to be continued to become like a really like an exponentially growing platform.
Right.
And how young people, when I think about like Gen Alpha, Gen Z, like they're not watching things in 20-minute spurts. They're watching things for hours at a time. They're keeping things on in the background for white noise. They don't call it that, right? Or brown noise. They don't call it that, but that's what they're doing, right? They're watching things at like all times and points of the night. So like this idea of like of a box on a TV to rate who watches something on a Friday for 30 minutes doesn't necessarily translate like to the future of entertainment and content in general. And then on top of that, you think about like where content is now. Like everything is content now. Like you're on a digital show right now that's going to be multi-streamed and then aired as a podcast and then maybe repurposed as an e-learning module. Like, so it's like I wonder, like when I think about Nielsen, which is such a staple, a pillar, a vanguard when it comes to like traditional understanding of audience engagement and understanding like what does it look like not just to innovate for the new thing, but what does it look like to like optimize all of the historical knowledge y'all have? Because like just because things have radically changed doesn't mean y'all's history of understanding is moot. Like there's still value in consumer behavior, audience behavior that from eras past. It's just a question of like, to me anyway, right? I ain't no, like, my last name is Nunn, not Nielsen. So, but I'm just saying, like, I think about the work. I think about this world, and I think about just like, man, like, okay, I would imagine there's pressure on both sides. Like there's this pressure to like, okay, we got to innovate to continue to measure. But at the same time, we don't want to like throw away all of this historical knowledge that we have because we were leading the world. We've led the world.
And the reality is that you can't, because a lot of that behavior is still a huge part of how people spend their time. And so what I love about the work that our team does is when you look at overall trend, yes, streaming is the standard. That is there's so much activity happening there. When you start to look at maybe different audience segments and, I have this target in mind that I really want to reach and connect with, they have probably a different trend, right? And so my area is usually with Black African-American audiences, and we still have the most balanced time between streaming, broadcast, and cable. If you cut out one pillar of that, you're missing a big opportunity to actually reach and connect with them in a way that maybe doesn't exist if you're just going, total audience. Same thing for example, radio. Radio for certain segments or demographics may not be the best approach, but if you're doing a media plan that really wants to connect with the Black community, that's, radio's got to be a part of it, and 9 times out of 10, right? And that looks different for different age groups or locations, and genres or formats that you might want to tap into. I think one of my favorite things that we put out is actually the weekly streaming top 10. So you can go, it's like a preview behind, what our paid clients get more frequently, but to say, here's what's actually being streamed overall for the most popular services. And then on the other side of that is like how people are spending their time across, I said, those broadcast, cable, streaming, big buckets. To your point around like all the different ways that we can access content now, and you're producing content with different platforms in mind. What's interesting is TV still holds, the TV itself, the piece of technology, still gets a lot of attention. And so the number one streaming platform on a television screen is YouTube. So I think people kind of blending these experiences of, I paid for that big 65-inch screen and she gonna get used. Okay, so, but what's on the screen is different, right? What's on the screen might actually be my favorite podcast or the latest Twitch stream. And maybe what's on my mobile or computer device might actually be, tonight's game or the next episode of said show. Everybody in my household might have a different screen with something different because we couldn't align on a show. And so accounting for all of these changes, giving our clients opportunities to understand all these different types of behaviors, like I said, that's part of the innovation that is required, a lot of the work that's being done. What's interesting and why this is a diversity and inclusion conversation for me is because traditions or behaviors that might be happening in one place aren't necessarily happening in others. And the folks at the decision-making table may not have exposure to a trend or a tradition that happens in a particular place. They don't know that grandma keeps her stories on all day to just have some company in the house. And that, yes, she is checking in, right? Or that, we do have the TV on during dinner in certain households, or that I don't actually subscribe to any services, or whatever the case may be. And so what I found in my career over the years is that being that disruptor or that voice in the room when people are, I remember like my first year with the company, and they were talking about different ways to innovate recruitment and get folks to participate in different surveys and things like that. Just put them online. And, I had to kind of let them know, like, not everybody has internet. not everybody has access to internet in their household. And so especially with the way that I grew up in a rural place, I'm like, cable don't even run on some of these roads, but for everybody who's
Right.
up in, maybe in an office in a big city and doesn't have that life experience, having someone on the team empowered to bring that voice to the table can really make a difference in how you show up with your solutions and innovation. So it all comes full circle for me. I know that was a long answer, but
no, this is a podcast. You're doing great. So, to that point, I love the fact, like, you brought it back to, like, your focus around diversity and inclusion. It's interesting because, like, we're in this moment in the season where there's all this externalized pressure, which then several leaders, for a variety of really sensible reasons, in my opinion, internalize that pressure around the scrutiny around DEI. And what I find interesting, like, in this conversation, and just even your point just now is a great use case of, irrespective of what you want to call it, you want to call it DEI, you want to call it culture, you want to call it employee experience, customer experience, you want to call it stakeholder management, having an appreciation of your population and the various sub-segments within that population is just good business, right?
Period.
Like, you can't.
That's all I've been talking about this year is, let us not get caught up in the label of the thing, do the work. Because marketing 101 is audience segmentation. If you don't do nothing else, please deeply understand your current and potential and future customer base, right? That is, at the end of the day, for an advertiser, what you're trying to do. From our perspective, having, quality data and measurement and signals and inputs that help you deeply understand and accurately understand and keep the pulse of what folks are dealing with and feeling and thinking and wanting from the brands that they buy or the programs that they tune into is just smart business, right? And so, and we've started now talking about two different paths around this conversation of inclusion. One is certainly like a values of how you want to run and operate your company culture. And I can't necessarily tell you how to do that. If you want to have a culture and environment where people feel included, they feel like they can speak up, they feel like they can bring their best ideas to the table, that they'll be supported, that they can, have a great human experience and deliver for you want all those principles or not, that's on you. But a lot of research says it is a great way to run a business if you include those principles. That you're more competitive, that you have better earnings. I mean, the list goes on, right? And one way that I really try to break this down for folks when I get pushback is, nobody questions the principle of diversity when it comes to investing your stock portfolio. But having different points of view in a team environment, in a innovation, let's solve a problem environment, that's the same thing. I'm investing in trying to find this solution. So it behooves me to have some different viewpoints in there to make sure we've got, the issue that I cannot even fathom might be covered in the room just because of this additional person that I pulled in. And again, that is just brilliant business.
Yeah. No, it's just good business, right? Like to your point. So if I sit back and we talk about even just the idea of looking ahead and understanding where your audience is going and how it's going to be shifting and changing, right? Like, I think about with Living Corporate, we have clients, we have partners who we're doing organizational assessments for them today to help them understand their employee layout today and help them understand what their goals are today and help them understand, okay, well, here's where you're going. Hey, we can take your current employee population and we can also go out and understand the products and solutions that you're trying to push in the market. And we can do a one-to-one. Hey, here is the thing that you're trying to sell or service you're trying to provide. And here's the audience segment that you're trying to sell it to. Here's where that audience segment is going in the next 5 to 10 years. Right. Now, the reality is a lot of companies don't have 5 to 10 year outlooks, so that's fine. Let's say the next 18 to 24 months. Now,
and even that,
you need to right. Even that,
that's people are cloudy these days.
Listen, people are more. It's just. I mean, it's part of our society. Like, we're just increasingly reactive. But the point just is, like, if you're not being thoughtful and mindful of where audiences are going and how they're shifting and changing, you're not going to be successful. And if you're and like to your point, like if you were to tell somebody else, oh well, no, we're only going to do this one thing, and we don't want to look at various points of investment. No, we just want to put all of our eggs in this one single basket. People will laugh you out the room. And yet, like if you're not thinking that way about your customers.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's a business case where that might be like, maybe there's some luxury brand where it's like, no, this one type is our customer and that's it. We're good. I'm sure that might exist somewhere, but for a lot of us, it don't. So what, we have to think about now too is whoever's our customer today, we should be experts on our customers today. Absolutely. But just the cycle of life, like who's next? And if they're your customer today, are they informing the next generation of your customers? What and why and how? What's their selling point? Because the reason why so-and-so might best pass down a brand to Gen Alpha might be different than what you actually think your value proposition is. So just all these things about, to your point earlier, around the way that they're consuming media, the way that they show up or don't. We have sports being like the dominant place to show up across television these days. And, we have younger generations saying less, necessarily urgency to do that right now, or it looks different perhaps for them as fans. So what does that look like? Right. And so those big moments to bring in mass media or campaigns are now, very almost one-to-one experiences where you're seeing more creator led campaigns and an ongoing conversation style with a different type of consumer to just kind of infuse a brand or a program into their day-to-day and how they're showing up. So the industry is pivoting in a lot of interesting ways, but you got to understand who it is you're going after. And the different dimensions that that they bring to the table and that are actually going to move the needle for you. Because you can have a campaign targeting women and you might reach me, but if your campaign doesn't necessarily speak to my experience or needs as a Black woman, then you didn't connect with me. And I think that's the difference that we talk about a lot in our work.
And it's interesting. I just watched an interview. This is like a comment for those who pay attention to these things. It's common knowledge. Like, Black Americans are like some of the largest consumers in America. Like, despite only being 13% of the population, like we consume a lot. And I think it's curious because, like, as an aside, like I think other cultures who came into America, like they came from like more collectivist cultures and spaces, whereas like Black Americans were born into a capitalistic context. So like the way that we exist within America and participate in America is unique. And we have outsized consumer practices because of our history in this country. Mm-hmm. And like knowing that and recognizing that and like understanding that like how you build a connection with one person is not gonna be the same way you build a connection with another person is not bad. Like it's important to be aware to help shape your strategy. You're going to save money and time and effort. You're going to differentiate in the market, or you might actually not die in the market. Right. So
right.
As I think about like this moment, this space, and this time, obviously we have the current administration creating all sorts of havoc and uncertainty and concern. Like what are themes you're noticing as like you just engage like the market, and then what are you, and then like part B to that in terms of the things you're noticing in terms of just like from a customer perspective and like what you're at large, without talking, obviously I'm gonna ask you to talk about your literal business, but like as you're just kind of engaging potential like clients and existing relationships, what are you noticing? And then the part B to that question is, what are you excited about that Nielsen's doing to provide support in this moment?
I will take the last part of that question first, because I think our Nielsen Diverse Intelligence Series reporting continues to be a light in the marketplace. We've been doing this series for, I think it's the 13th year, maybe the 14th. And so again, just taking some of the best things that we know about how to reach and connect with different types of consumers. And I lead the research, as I said, for our Black and African American audience report. That goes out into the marketplace and still delivers a ton of value for clients, big and small. And I'm so proud of and excited about that work in particular, and that it continues, because it's a way to center people who've historically been excluded or maybe rolled into, like I said, this bigger umbrella. And it's an opportunity through data to understand in a deeper way. And especially for an industry that may not have lived experience, may not have personal life exposure, may not have that, walk the path of, Asian American, third generation, person in California, or, queer Gen Z consumer, like moving out for the first time. There's all these different ways that through what we know about people, we can just highlight a path to connection through media and through marketing. And so I love the work in that. The first part of the question with how our work is going in this current moment, or trends that I've seen, the good news is the work continues. So many clients continue to just talk about, we have to continue to understand this is our path to growth, period. And where I started in this role 5 years ago, and a lot of the conversation was around the moral case, and that is still important. Today, we are pretty much almost exclusively talking about the business case around why we need Black consumers, why we need Hispanic Latino consumers, why we need to understand the experience of women of all age groups, or people in rural America. So people are taking inclusion as an essential ingredient to their path to growth. And that is really exciting. Again, the moral case still matters. But if what's going to get you the yes from your leadership and decision makers is the business case, then that does sort of put some insurance around the continued work. The downside is that there's a lot of great work happening, and it's still, it's quiet, right? And so I think people are just trying to, one, keep your own house in order, because there is so much change and bigger shifts happening across the business in many ways. But two, just trying to keep our focus to continue pushing forward to do good work, and to bring in folks who maybe, like I said, have been historically excluded, shine a light on where those opportunities are, and have a win-win situation. So there are a lot of good things to celebrate, and that's been encouraging. 1 hour at a time.
Charlene,
However, 1 hour
Charlene,
at a time.
Look, right. No, 100%. Look, I appreciate and I'm thankful for the work that Nielsen does. I continue to be thankful for you and the team, Sandra, for sure. Much love to y'all. Where can people learn more about you, connect with you, and support you?
Yeah, thank you. And yes, shout out to Sandra, who really just creates space for our team to do amazing work, both internally at Nielsen and externally across the clients that we serve. You can access our research at nielsen.com/insights. You can connect with me or reach out on LinkedIn, Charlene Corely. And yeah, there's always some really interesting stuff posting there to check out. Like I said, to fill in the blanks on some of the trends and goings on. But it is not an easy time, but the reason to keep at it to me is very simple. And that does make it easy to keep saying yes.
Amen. Listen, you're appreciated. You're a friend of the show. We'll look forward to having you back.
And likewise, thank you so much for the work that you're doing and leading. It really is important and critical to not just go by our bias for real, but to have data, to have providers and partners that can really just chart a path based on, some quality, some science, and some information that we can trust to inform or at least validate the path forward. So thank you for your continued work.
Thank y'all. Listen, y'all, it has been Charlene Corely, all kinds of dope stuff. You know what I'm saying? I'm about to say all of her titles at Nielsen. She killing it over there. Make sure y'all click the link in the show notes, learn more about the work that she's doing, her team is doing, and connect with her. Till next time, y'all. Peace.
Living Corporate is a podcast by Living Corporate LLC. Our logo was designed by David Dawkins. Our theme music was produced by Ken Brown. Additional music production by Antoine Franklin for Musical Elevation. Post-production is handled by Jeremy Jackson. Got a topic suggestion? Email us at livingcorporatepodcast@gmail.com. You can find us online on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and living-corporate.com. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned.